What do you get out of teaching? You get fun, you get excitement, you get diversity, you get this wonderful relationship with the children. It's just the best job in the world.
And
So I decided to go into primary school teaching because it offers such a variety of different interests, and you can explore so many different subjects, and that different ages throughout primary school are really interested in the changes in the different ages.
Everything you do, you make a difference. I can't think of anything I do in the school that isn't making a difference to these kids' lives. But when you're in secondary, it's a lot different. The situations are different. You're not in contact with the children as regularly as you would be in primary.
In primary, the children in general come in bouncing, big smiles, light up a room. And it's really nice to be in primary and see the difference that you're making. You know, children come in to reception when they're 4. Some can't write their own name, and they're leaving you being able to write sentences with punctuation.
And when a child first turned to me, after I'd been teaching them for about 4 weeks, and said, "Oh, I get it," it made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up, and I still remember that to this day, and I still get those moments when the hair stands up on the back of my neck, and that's what makes teaching absolutely fantastic.
Top, that's it, come down the pirate's plat, back up the same line.
Some people say it's like a calling to you, and that sort of resonates with me a bit, and you do feel like you're making such a difference. Yeah, I went to a careers fair in sixth form, and they recommended speech therapy as a sort of possible career, and did work experience in a primary school as well during my sixth form, and it sort of led me down that route of getting involved in it and becoming very interested in it.
And I remember saying to my mum one day, you know, I want to work with children. I seem to get on with them quite well, and they respond to me quite well. And she said, well, you know, if you're going to work with children and earn money, you're going to have to be a teacher and be a headmaster.
It got to a point in my career where I wasn't achieving anything, didn't feel I was contributing. And when you sit there and think you've got another 30 years of that, no. And the gamble I took was that I'd come into school having no experience of working in school at all. I'd come in voluntary, if necessary, but come in as a teaching assistant.
As I was made redundant a couple of years ago from a job I was working in recruitment, and I took over subsequently the childcare duties. I've got 2 young boys, and I started doing the school runs, and I was available to go on school trips and things like that. I hadn't thought at all about primary education, but it was a nice time spent with my children. And then I think it was I remember exactly where it was, a conversation with another parent, and they were saying, you know, I explained my situation. They said, "Oh, you know, have you thought of teaching?" And my immediate reaction was, well, secondary education doesn't really appeal to me. I did a bit of teaching when I was doing my degree way back when. And she went, "No, what about primary teaching?" And it was like a light bulb moment. It was like, oh yeah. In the modern day, the family unit is not necessarily as it used to be sort of 20, 30 years ago, and therefore very often it's the man in the family that's not there. And so the reaction that you get as a man in primary from a lot of children is that kind of, not a surrogate parent as such, but you know, it's a male role model that they look for, and you'd be surprised how many children seem to sort of really sort of gravitate towards that.
And I think, you know, if you've got a school full of female staff, then there isn't maybe someone there for the boys to look up to, someone that always wears a shirt, maybe, you know, sometimes a tie. You know, I think that's a big thing for the parents, is having that, you know, the male role models in school.
I think children really like to laugh. They like humorous teachers. That's one of the things they always talk about. And I think they have a really good banter with the male teachers, and I think they really like that.
If you want to work with children, if you think that's where you can make a difference, and you're passionate about it, then you can come in, be you, and that's it, really. I don't think there's a mould for the primary school male teacher. What sort of person do you have to be a teacher? You have to be energetic, you have to be enthusiastic, you have to be bright and breezy the whole time. You never have to have a down day.
I have a good sense of humour, to be kind, and to be very resilient as well, I think is important, because it is quite a tough job in some ways too. So.
You need to be able to take a lot on. It's you don't just come in at 9 o'clock and go in your classroom and stand in front of 30 children for 6 hours and go home again. You need to have a whole package of skills to be able to you need to be able to work with on a day-to-day basis.
And I think you should be prepared to work as a team with young children, which is not easy. So you have to be, there's lots of compromises you've got to make on maybe your sets of values to be able to, you want everything to look fantastic. You're not necessarily going to get that every time, but it's not about you, it's about them.
The winners.
It's definitely a magical job, and I couldn't sit behind a desk. I have to be, hands-on, and it's nice to be working in a job where you can see that you're making a real difference.
It's really inspiring for me as an adult, but also for them as young people to that moment when the light bulb comes on and they've got it, and you did that. Nobody else did that. Something you did or initiated, they've got that.
And I think in lots of jobs, you don't get that purpose that you get as a teacher, where you know that you can see the goals that you're trying to achieve, and you can see the development you're actually making on a day-to-day basis, so you can see the difference that you're making.
I mean, it might just be one girl in the writing area, and suddenly after 3 months of work she's written her own name by herself. It might just be that there's a child they're finding things tough at home, there are things maybe going on with mum and dad, and they just come in and tell you that they're really happy and they've had a great day. I mean, there's a little ray of sunshine every day that make me think, yeah, that's why I do what I do.
The times when a child comes up to you, maybe a year later or 2 years later or 5 years later, and say, oh, Mr. Huff, I remember you. Do you remember the time we did this? Or do you remember the time we did that? That was brilliant, wasn't it? And for them to remember you and to remember what you've did is just wonderful.
I think I had one male teacher in my primary school, and Mr. Pierce, if he's watching, but I always remember Mr. Pierce, and I just thought, if I always remember him, what an amazing job. If I can go in, in 20 years' time, when the children in my class are having children, maybe they'll say, when I was in reception, I remember Mr. Weed, and he, so I think you get a real sense that you're appreciated by the parents, by the children. You don't get that when you're working 9 till 5, typing at a computer. So yeah,
it's different all the time. You'll never be bored. You can be creative. It's worthwhile. Have you got any better ideas?